Welcome to the Monarch Group podcast. Today's guest is Justin Hack, a highly respected financial advisor from Northwestern Mutual. Known for his thoughtful, relationship-first approach, Justin helps individuals and families build smart, personalized financial plans that support real-life goals. From buying a first home to building long-term wealth, he's one of the go-to advisors in Louisville for people who want honest, guiding, and lasting results. How's it going, Justin?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I feel like we've had this podcast going for a long time now, wanting to do it. It's probably been about 2 years, and you've been on my mind that got to get him in to share some info.
Yeah.
So want to start off, tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you come from, and what get you into financial advising.
Perfect. Yeah. So Justin Hack, I practice Hack Financial, affiliated very proudly with Northwestern Mutual. Been in business since COVID, and I think, COVID for a lot of people was just like an opportunity just to like really reassess what was important, what you were doing with your career. And I was in logistics with a big third-party logistics company that's all over the country. I had a pretty successful career there, but then I just really woke up one day and I was like, I just don't really like what I'm doing. I just felt like I was watching the clock every day, waiting for 5 o'clock. And then I just had always envisioned myself as an entrepreneur and really wanting to do something that created an impact. And I actually was kind of semi-recruited to Northwestern Mutual when I was in college, but ended up going a different route. And so COVID happened. I started looking for some new jobs, and then all of a sudden Northwestern Mutual kind of came out of the woodwork again. And I'm just a big believer that if you're paying attention, life will put stuff in your path for you. And so it just felt very much like that's what I was called to be doing.
Wow, that's a big calling to come and help people. I mean, that's essentially what it is, what you're doing. And so you've been how many years now since COVID? So 5 years now.
Closing in on 5 years. So yeah, March of 2026 will be my 5-year anniversary.
Nice.
So,
and has it always been just you, just a team? How did that transition go?
So when you start off as a financial advisor or financial planner, you typically start as kind of a solo practice. You do a lot of what's called joint work with other advisors. But I got a little bit of a faster start than most because I was a career changer a little later in life. I think a lot of people get into the industry when they are in their early 20s, right out of college, don't know really what they're doing, but they know how to build relationships. And so they get into the business. And so I switched later in life, was able to build a team fairly quickly. So I've got a team of 4 individuals underneath of me, as well as myself, and looking to continue to grow.
That's a big growth. I mean, you're averaging one a year there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are they all financial advising, or is some do they have different roles?
Yeah, everybody's got their own roles. So there are so many things that go into being a good, well-rounded financial planning practice. So we have Cheryl, who does our insurance operations. We've got Brandon, who does our investment operations. We've got the beautiful, my wife, Jacqueline, who is our director of operations. And then we've also got Jamie, who does some scheduling. So.
Okay. Nice. So it's all everyone's like divvied out in what they need to do and take care of.
Yeah. So I always say Jacqueline's the one who really runs the business. I'm the one who's in the meetings all day. She makes sure that things get done in a timely manner.
Did I get the wrong person on the podcast? So I was supposed to get your wife on here?
Yeah,
Is that what
I think so, man. I'll see you next time. Yeah, I'll get out of here.
Well, so from start to now, have you always had the same philosophy? What is your philosophy being at Northwestern Mutual?
So one thing that's really awesome about Northwestern Mutual, I can't speak highly enough of them as a company, just in general. Like I just got back from our annual meeting up in Milwaukee, and just the energy of Northwestern Mutual it's very palpable. Like it's just such an awesome environment. Everybody is just so focused on creating an impact. And that's why I think that we're just absolutely taking over the financial planning industry in general. But my philosophy has always been that life is short. We have to seize opportunities, and we got to chase adventure. And so my whole go-to-market strategy with how I approach clients and how I have conversations with them is I don't want to just help you gather assets so that you can sit on the beach one day and drink pina coladas, which if that's your deal, like great. But I want to help you to not only understand how to build the retirement that you want, but I want you to build the road to retirement as well. I want you to be able to be the person that when opportunity knocks at your door, that you're able to actually take advantage of it. And so my whole philosophy when I work with clients is that retirement is a phase of life that we may or may not actually ever see. So how do we plan to arrive well positioned at every stage of life to live the lifestyle that we want? So a common thing I tell my clients is I want to equip you with the tools to be the architect of your own future.
I like that. Do you have that trademarked?
Not yet. Yeah,
you should.
Maybe I should.
Yeah,
I'm on a podcast. So.
Yeah, I like that. Say that again.
I want to equip my clients with the tools they need to be the architect of their own future.
That's really good. Did you chat GPT that one? Or is
that's straight out of the head, man. I'm telling you.
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah.
What is your typical client that you're helping at the moment? Like, do you have like one bucket, or are you seeing like a few different types?
So my philosophy has always been, and this can be a challenge from time to time, but my philosophy has always been that if I'm sitting across from somebody, regardless of income, age, gender, ethnicity, whatever the demographic, if they are a good quality person, they want to learn, they're coachable, and we can have mutual respect for one another, I will take that case. So really, I don't have a specific target person per se. Now, as you get into this business and over time, you start to see that your targets eventually start to unfold on their own. So I'd say the primary markets I work within are pilots at cargo or passenger airlines. So your UPS pilots, your Delta pilots, American, United, those kind of guys. Also some of the regional airlines as well. And then pharmacists. So been working with quite a few pharmacists, usually clinical pharmacists with doctorate degrees, and then business owners. I think the reality about financial planning is that it's never too early to start a financial plan, and you don't ever have to have a certain amount of money to have an idea or a financial plan. Now, while that is the case, there's also a certain type or group of people who tend to find the most value out of what we can do and the full scope of resources.
So it's sort of the thing where the best day to start a financial plan is always today, that sort of thing.
100%.
And how would someone go about that? Say someone's now that just pops into the mind, like, you know what, I want to start, I need help. What's that? How does that process go from they have the thought to then actually getting the help?
Well, so I'd say one of the main things that I always tell people is make sure you understand the benefits your employer gives you. So sit down with your benefit specialists. Most major corporations are going to have one. So like just understand what you have and what you don't have, which is also very important. But from the perspective of somebody who's just starting out, I think talk to somebody, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else in this space, whether it's a mentor, ask how they got to where they are. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the old adage that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so I think if there are people that are in your world that you respect that have done very well for themselves, go ask them how they got there. Now, that's more of the personal way of doing it, but I will always sit down with somebody, like I mentioned, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, stage of life, whatever, and give them just some high-level pointers. And sometimes that might look like, hey, Alex, you're a really great person. Here's a couple of things that I can give you as pointers, and I'd like to maybe give you a call once a year, and I'll check in with you, but maybe you're not at a stage right now where I can provide more value than you do in your 401k match and putting money into a savings account. But I can still give you that advice, and I'll make the time quickly for somebody who's at that stage.
What are those? So for someone who's not quite ready to do a full, onboarding with you, what are those sort of quick tips that you give to people? So you said 401k. What are the main ones that you advise that everyone should be doing?
So the analogy I always use is that building a financial plan is like building a house. And sometimes when let's say you walk up to the fresh lot, it's all grass and you got to go build a house, right? Everybody's all excited about building the walls and the roof and the windows and what is it going to look like from the curb appeal side. But the reality is the first thing you have to do is dig a hole, go down in the ground and build a foundation. And sometimes that feels like going backwards. And so the foundation of any good financial plan is threefold. Number one, it is making sure you have a high yield savings account and emergency fund. And so if you're going to your big box bank and talk to them about their savings account, you might get maybe 1% or 1.5%. There's a lot of accounts out there, high yield savings accounts that are free, online accounts, really easy to use. That's usually a first stop for somebody just starting out.
What sort of percentages should they be looking at?
Right now in the current interest rate environment, probably between 3.4 to 3.8. The reality is it's a competitive environment, so they are variable interest rates that are going to follow whatever is happening with the federal funds rate. So sometimes that means it's going to be, X with this high yield savings account and Y over here. And then maybe, a month later, they kind of flip flop just depending on what their business is doing. But you want to at least get over a 3% right now.
Okay.
In a high yield savings account.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, I would say, and I cannot stress this enough, everybody wants to act like we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, me included. But your income is the lifeblood of your financial plan. And I'm going to pause there because that is so important to truly understand. And people think people love to live with the mindset of, oh, it'll never happen to me. One of the big things that's a core belief of how we do financial planning at Hack Financial and at Northwestern Mutual is that income protection is incredibly important. So your employer usually will offer you about 60% long-term disability coverage. We're always going to recommend that somebody covers the gap. So if you can put yourself in that mindset, what would happen if I was to get a bad diagnosis or a bad car accident? I'm not ready to work for the next 2 years. Again, sometimes it feels like we're going backwards. We're paying for an insurance policy, but that enables us to continue that income and get to the point where we can invest with confidence regardless of what life throws at us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just those two? Have you got another point?
And number three would be implementing life insurance for a lot of people. I know I get on here talking about financial planning and people are like, oh my God, he's going to be the insurance guy. That's the reality is Northwestern Mutual, we believe in what's called a protect and prosper mindset. I've got all the tips and tricks and all the fun, different kinds of investment strategies and everything. But no matter what stage of life you're in, the beginning is the beginning. And that is those three things. So emergency fund, income protection, and life insurance.
Okay. And that's like you said earlier, that's just if a rainy day happens, you want to be protected, not have to worry about that so you can continue moving forward with whatever else you're doing.
Correct. So I always tell people life is crazy and chaotic today. And I liken it to being on the treadmill of life. Kind of like if you stopped walking on a treadmill, it's probably going to shoot you off the back of it. That's how life feels sometimes. Like we're just always having to move forward. But financial planning is the opportunity to step off of the treadmill of life for a moment and then get the right planning in place. That way we know that you're good and you don't have to have those concerns or worries. Right. So,
okay. And then, so someone's doing these three things and they've built up that foundation. When should they go to the next stage, which is, going through with you and going for a full plan?
Yeah. So I think number one, I'll say too, those three things are also that's what you do outside of your employer benefits. So simultaneous with those three things is make sure you're maxing out your 401k match. Right. So people think, oh, if I did the match, I'm maxing it out. In America, you can do $23,500 in 2025 into a 401k. So you're not really maxing out until you get to that point. Now, that doesn't mean that you do that before you do anything else, but do your 401k match and then the three foundational financial planning pieces. Now, the next stage is the kind of the green light for something different is, do I have my emergency fund fully funded? And I can't stress this enough too, because people get so excited. They're like, I see all these people making all this money in the market. And I'm like, I get that, but you can still make plenty of money in the market after you have your emergency fund in place, because the reality about the market is we don't know what it's going to do. And let's say you only have, the Dave Ramsey $1,000 of an emergency fund, and then something really bad happens, but you've been investing this whole time. Well, the market may be down at that point. And now you're having to sell a bunch of investments for a loss because you didn't have the emergency fund.
Well, and what would you recommend as an emergency fund?
3 to 6 months of expenses.
3 to 6 months. Okay.
Yep. So typically speaking, if somebody has their income protected through their employer and then they've supplemented on top of that, the beginning date for that coverage would be 90 days. So that would give us the green light to say, well, hey, you really only need a 3-month emergency fund. Because after 3 months, your disability insurance would kick in.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
If you don't have that in place, though, I typically tell clients probably need about 6 to 12 months of expenses.
Okay. And that can be tough to build up, but
It
definitely vital.
truly
I
can
see.
be.
Yeah.
It truly can be. Yeah.
So if someone's got to this place where they've got the green light and they're ready to move forward with you, what do you see as the most common reason or scenarios why people don't start a financial plan sooner than they should?
I think it's just complacency. Honestly, I think it's just that people get really caught up in what they're doing. A client comes to mind for me right now. He makes very good money, but doesn't really do much in the financial planning space. And he's told me multiple times, like, well, I've got this thing coming up for my kids that I've got to pay for, and I've got, I just co-signed on a loan for my daughter, but the reality is, there's always going to be something, and I think that there's another old kind of saying, like, don't live beyond your means. I think so many people in today's world, they get told, oh, you need to have this, or like there's all these different consumerism products or whatever that you need to have. And then all of a sudden your fixed expenses are 75, 80% of your income. So I think, one kind of tip I would give anyone is the 60-20-20 rule. So when you think about your income, your expenses, your fixed non-reducible expenses should not exceed 60% of your income. Now, that's a threshold that you can measure out with the budget, right? Because then if you do that 60%, you have 20% that you can put into your discretionary spending and 20% into your future. So we call it the 3 Fs. You got fixed expenses, future, and fun. Now, if, let's say, I have exceeded that 60%, and now I'm sitting at 75%, well, now what I've given myself is a choice. Because I've got 25% of my income left over. Am I going to do the 20% for my future and eat ramen every day and just have 5% left over for fun? Or more likely, in today's world, I'm going to spend the 20% of my discretionary income, and then I'm going to only put 5% away for the future.
Got it. So you're saying I shouldn't have a 60% fun ratio?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, the 60% for fun. I mean, hey, if you got a terminal illness, blow it up, man. But other than that, I'd say you probably wouldn't want to put some stuff away from the future.
I'm gonna have to rethink some stuff now. Those weekly trips to Dave and Buster's are gonna have to be cut back.
Yes, D&B got them again.
Yeah, I know they did. They've got great prizes, great food. How can I resist it?
Yeah.
So if someone is in this position then and they're going through financial plan with you and they've built up this sort of healthy, stable, how do you then go from thinking in the short term, which they're planning everything for the short term, to the long term 2050, retirement, up until death? Like how does that conversation go?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really comes down to the resources that you get from somebody in my position. So like the unfortunate reality about the financial planning world is that there's a lot of people that call themselves financial advisors, but what we would really call them is asset gatherers. They'll tell you, hey, you got to do this account with this allocation, but they're not really helping you to see what does it all mean one day and how am I actually going to distribute this to myself? So that's the power of a true financial plan. And just for everybody listening to this, a financial plan is not a quarterly statement. A financial plan is usually a 60 to 120 page document that uses a lot of math modeling and forecasting to help you see further down the road. So when you have the ability to understand somebody's retirement income their duration of retirement, like when do they actually want to retire and when can they feasibly from a health perspective, and then how much their assets are and how are they invested, what's that rate of return look like. Those are the variables that we get to use within a true financial plan to better understand what levers do we need to pull today so that we arrive well positioned for the future. And to your question, like how do you balance that with today? I think it's just understanding that we have to plan with the end in mind. But I can't tell you how many times I've run a financial plan, and there's all different kinds of people out there. There are people that don't save enough, but for every person that doesn't save enough, typically there's somebody that's way over saving, and they're throwing the kitchen sink at retirement, but they're just like, why is life so hard today? And so when you actually use that financial plan, you can start to see, well, hey, maybe I can divert some assets from this bucket that I'm doing over here and move it over to something that I can have more access to at a different time. So that's something we call time segmentation. So we always want to make sure we're understanding how do we fund each bucket on the timeline so that we arrive well positioned at every stage of life.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I like that breakdown. I can imagine a lot of people come to you and not really having a good idea of how much it costs to be in retirement as well. That I'm sure you go over those sorts of numbers too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's here's the good news for somebody who might have a lot of anxiety or concern around this is that it always comes down to what you're actually going to spend. So, we can very simply say, you'll probably spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of your lifestyle today, adjusted for inflation. But some people are very simple and their home might be paid off by the time they're retired. And they're like, I really only would really need, $3,000 a month in today's money to live the lifestyle I want to live. Other people have completely outlandish ideas of what they're going to be able to spend when they're in retirement. But again, that's where utilizing a financial plan, we can really help them understand, are you overfunded? Are you underfunded? What can we be doing differently to supplement the areas around retirement as well?
Got it. There's a lot to that. And that's why I think it's so important that someone does come and speak to like yourself, because it's just people can think they've got it planned out by themselves, but there's so many different factors. And I know that all those math adjustments that you just mentioned, I'm sure they're just far beyond the average person to fully comprehend without having someone like you go through it with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's not what I always tell people too is like, because I've got a buddy who comes to mind right now, and he has shown me his spreadsheet that he is convinced he is good on, and, more power to him. What I think the reality of life is that there are people who are going to do it on their own and can actually very successfully do it on their own. And so this is not me saying that you absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, have to have a financial planner. The reality, I believe, though, is that no matter what you're doing on your own, I can always continue to add in more value on top of that. But will you be okay? There's certainly a group out there that can do it on their own, and they can be okay. Then there's people who are going to do it on their own. And unfortunately, it only takes like 1 or 2 times of shooting yourself in the foot really bad to completely derail the success and longevity of your portfolio. So there are unfortunately going to be people that are going to do it on their own, and they're going to mess it up. And then there are people who just acknowledge right out of the gate, like, this is not what I do. I don't want to do this, and I would rather have somebody else do it for me. It's kind of like the old saying, like, do you mow your own grass? Like, or do you pay somebody to do it because you just don't have the time? And so two of my main categories of people that I work with are pharmacists and pilots. What I frequently tell them is like, if I got into the cockpit of an airplane, I'm lost. There's so many buttons. How do you even know what these all do? And then they always laugh and they're like, oh yeah, that's kind of how I feel when you talk about a financial plan. So, and the same with pharmacists. I'm like, I can't even pronounce the name on a bottle, let alone like know what that medication does. And so everybody has a lane, right?
And it's just those people that want that peace of mind that's taken care of as well. Because I'm sure that a lot of your clients, they're just like, I don't want to have to worry about it. I just want to know I'm taken care of, like, down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of misnomers around like what does it cost to work with an advisor? And my promise is that long term, I will provide more value than you pay me in a fee. And like that's something that I feel extremely confident in. And now that's over a longer period of time, right? Like I'm never going to say that we're never going to have a loss in a year, but that doesn't mean that, let's say you had that loss in the year, are you going to be the person that sells at the bottom? I'm the person that tells you, hey, we're weathering this storm because we planned for this.
And stuff that you look through as well. It's not, you just don't look on that one day. You see the full picture of how it's been going over time.
Yeah. I would imagine it's very similar to you and somebody who's like, well, I don't want to pay real estate commissions. I'm just going to sell my house like for sale by owner, right? Like, and you're like, well, did you get what you could have gotten?
Exactly. It's like you can. Should you? Probably not.
Right.
Yeah. Which I'm glad you brought up houses, because that was going to be my next question. So great segue into that.
Yeah.
If someone's wanting to buy a house, what would you say is a great way for them to save up down payment?
Yeah. So a time horizon dictates the investment. So let's say you're telling me somebody wants to buy a house in 6 months. Do not take investment risk with those dollars. like put that into a high yield savings account or a money market fund. If it's within 6 months, you might even do a CD, although you do lose the access to the funds for that period if you use a CD. But make sure you're not just putting it into a checking account. That's number one. Now, if let's say you're talking about somebody who wants to buy a house in 2 years, realistically, I'd say still save it in cash, because we just don't know. I mean, go look at the market today, right? Like, it is all over the place. Liberation Day, we saw a huge decline. Now we're at an all-time high for the S&P as of yesterday. So, like, it's a wild world out there. And timing is everything. Now, we don't focus on timing the market. We focus on time in the market, which is why if you have 2 or less years, I'd say, hey, 100% cash, but like do it strategically. Now, if you start to say, hey, I'm, wrapping up college, or I am, I'm switching jobs soon and I'm moving to a new area, but I'm probably not going to switch jobs for like 3 years or 4 years. That's where there's a type of account called a non-qualified brokerage account. So essentially, qualified just means, it's an IRS definition, basically, that means employer-sponsored pre-tax retirement account. For the purposes of today, we'll call qualified just retirement, right? So a non-qualified is non-retirement. And so this is the account that you can invest in that has no income restrictions, has no limitations. You can put whatever you want into it, and you can access it whenever you want. Now, ideally, you don't access it unless you've allowed it to compound for at least a couple of years. But if somebody told me they wanted to buy a house in 3 to 5 years, I'd be doing a blend of the two strategies. I'd be doing cash, making sure I've got some safer dollars, and then I'd be utilizing a non-qualified account so that I can help to grow those assets with a higher chance of a higher rate of return, right?
Okay, that's good. It's good. It's a good approach to it, making sure that the timing and understanding what their motivations are. And that's why I always say to people who are looking to buy a house, speak to a realtor as soon as possible. Now I'm going to start saying, speak to a financial advisor as soon as possible.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next advice, which, do you speak to people about, looking at their financial picture, and if they're renting and, buying? Do you go over those pros and cons, and if they're ready and what should they do? Do you go over that with them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in real fast, I'll put one other thing out there on your last question, which is, time horizon dictates the risk tolerance of any investment that you're going to do. But let's say, the best solution is to be building it without knowing when the goal is coming. So one of the big things that I always tell clients is, I want you to build your opportunity fund. So your opportunity fund is the down payment on the next house. Maybe it's 15 years from now, we're putting the down payment on the lake house. Maybe it's, hey, I have a 2-year-old child who 14 years from now is going to get their driver's license, and I don't want to put that car on a loan. I'd rather have something that's been growing in the background that I can take a distribution from and pay for the car with cash. So I think, again, that's where financial planning early as possible can help you to arrive well-positioned, rather than saying, hey, I've got this goal in front of me now I've got to start prepping for it. So that's the answer for that. But renting versus buying, absolutely. I think the big thing with renting versus buying, I think, is that there's an art versus a science to the business, right? So from the science perspective, completely objective, scientific, non-emotional, right? What does the math tell us? And so the math of, do I rent versus buy, would say buy, right? Because $1 today is not $1 tomorrow. So if I buy a 30-year mortgage, or a house with a 30-year mortgage rather, and let's say I consistently stay in that house for 30 years, well, my mortgage value never changed, right? I don't have to pay more when my rent goes up, because the bank is going to charge me the same amount for 30 years. So think about what $100 buys you today versus, what $100 bought you 10 years ago, right? It becomes easier to pay for because it doesn't change while the world around it does. So objectively and scientifically, I would say the math says you should buy. Now, the reality, though, is that sometimes you'll have a lender that might say, oh, you can afford this. The reality is, if you go back to my 60-20-20 rule, the real threshold that we would see for a mortgage is 30%. So 30 of that 60 or 50% of the fixed expenses, that's where that home value mortgage rate should be, because that's how you make sure that you don't end up over your skis, where then you've got that choice to make. Now, from a renting perspective, some people just, that's where the art comes in, right? Like maybe, they can understand and maybe they're positioned well where they could buy a home, but they're just like, I just don't really want to be tied down. And that's what we learn from clients when we go through what we call a fact-finding discussion, where you just have an open dialogue about what they're looking to accomplish. But sometimes they just tell us, I don't really know if I want to be in Louisville forever. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, maybe you don't buy. Because then you have the stress of like, hey, I could buy a house, but then, 2 years later, I decide to move. Now I've got to deal with the stress of selling that house and then go buying another one. So I think it really just comes down to the individual and what their capacity looks like, but also, what their thoughts and feelings of their future look like.
Got it. Okay. So you would advise someone to say they're thinking about buying a house, they are renting, go and get that mortgage pre-approval, get the fixed numbers, and then come to you and be like, look, here's my numbers. How does this look compared to my 60-20-20, and go from there?
100%. Yeah. That's the kind of review I do with clients all the time. Yeah, because I think there's so much that goes beyond just investing your money or helping you understand your risks. And it's how do you bounce ideas off of somebody that actually knows what they're talking about? For anyone listening, mom and dad might be great people, but they might not always have the best answers. And, they're just going from their experience. And that's not a problem. Again, they're probably great people. But at the end of the day, like somebody like myself can help them actually crunch the numbers on it and actually understand, like, is this going to materially change what I'm able to do for my future? So
that makes sense. And typically, from my experience, when parents are involved in real estate transactions, it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
Usually we prefer that to be separate. It's very different markets, very different, but yes. So I can agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
So someone's bought a house, they've saved up the money, bought a house. Obviously, a lot of different things can happen when owning a house. What do you recommend for people keeping that rainy day fund? Is there something specific that you think is great for, house expenses that could pop up?
Yeah, I think that's where that 3 to 6 month emergency fund comes in. And then, depending on your situation long term, you might get to the point where, rather than having to have more of a robust rainy day fund, you open a home equity line of credit. Now, big disclaimer, home equity line of credit, don't look at this as just a bank account, but the cool part about a home equity line of credit, if implemented correctly, is that you can open it and then never touch it. And if you do it with a good lender, they're probably not even going to charge you any closing costs. And it's just there in the background so that if you do have like a sudden leak in your house and maybe you want to pay for it a little bit more over time rather than just emptying the rainy day fund completely, you could do a little bit of a blend between the two. And so, but obviously you have to build home equity to get there, right? So that might not be day one. But again, I think safe dollars stay in safe money. And so that's where you want to use that high yield savings account. Money market funds do have a little bit of investment risk to them, but they are looked at as what's called a cash equivalent. And so that can also be a really good opportunity to get just a little bit of a higher interest rate on it. But again, you want to make sure you're not putting that into the market.
Okay, that's great advice to have, because that's one thing that I've seen a lot of people that go forward buying a house without thinking of those rainy day things that could happen, which obviously do happen from time to time. I know we spoke about stuff, unfortunately, has happened to you that you've had to deal with.
Oh, man. Yeah. 4 months of being displaced in 7 Airbnbs last year. So big shout out to Robert English and Travelers for the insurance help with that one. So
yeah, that's what you want to be prepared for, and that's definitely something that you want to have budgeted out there.
Yeah.
I think that's some great advice and info that you've given there. Got to swap topics to Louisville. What do you love about working and living here?
I absolutely love Louisville. So I actually grew up in Elizabethtown, moved up to go to St. X for a couple of years in high school, then moved up to Dayton, Ohio, which Ohio is a great place, but very flat, very gray for like 9 months of the year. And then moved back to Louisville to get the rolling hills and the sunshine when I was 20. And I've always loved Louisville as a place. I think it's the fact that it's a little bit of a bigger city, but with that small town feel. And I think it's awesome that we're in the triangle, as I always call it. So you got Indy, you got Cincinnati, you've got Nashville, like right around us. you're 6 hours from anywhere else in the country. And I'm a big travel buff and I like to go see live music. And so there's always just something a stone's throw away, or now because Louisville's growing a lot, coming to us. But, being a foodie city, bourbon capital of the world is always nice as well. But yeah, I just love the people. I think you get a lot of the Southern hospitality kind of vibe in Louisville for the most part still, which when you travel, sometimes you don't really see that everywhere else.
Then you appreciate it more when you come back.
Yes, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
being a foodie, then what's your go-to recommendation for Louisville? Then, if you got to give one.
Okay, so I thought a lot about this because I'm a big. I love going. It's like one of the number one things I love to spend money on is a nice dinner out. So I actually have 3 for you.
Oh.
So. Number 1 would be Steak and Bourbon. Their new location downtown, incredible. It's like a modern 1920s vibe in there. It's really cool. And then love Ramen House. If you haven't been there before, that place is incredible. And then I think they're moving to a new location here soon too. So I'm excited to see how that looks. And then Sapporo. I'm a big sushi guy. So
yeah. Those are good choices. I've been to 2 of those. I haven't been to the Steak and Bourbon yet because there are other ones on like Westport Road area.
Yeah. So the other one's their original location, still really good, but same food both places. But the one downtown it's pretty cool. You should check it out.
I'll have to add that to my list. Okay.
Yeah.
Any last recommendation, one top tip that you would give out to the people listening?
Yeah, I'd say budgets are underutilized. So the reality about a budget is that sometimes we fill out a budget and we feel really good about it. And we're like, oh my God, I'm going to stick to this time. This is going to be great. But then we put it in a drawer. We don't look at it again for the next, 6 months or more realistically until we're like, my God, what happened? I need a budget again. And so I think budgets are really good. I think if you have a partner, I always recommend to my clients, like sit down once a quarter, like put it on the calendar ahead of time so that you're taking it seriously. Sit down, fill out a budget, but then treat yourself afterwards and go to a nice dinner. Maybe Steak and Bourbon.
Steak and Bourbon, yeah.
Exactly. But I think more importantly is how do you track against that budget? And so there's a lot of tools out there. Obviously I'm a little biased, but I'm partial to Northwestern Mutual's cash flow tool that we have on our app. So even for those people who are starting out that might not even be ready to become a client yet, like directly, we can still get them set up on the website where they can use this cash flow tool, where they can sync their accounts online. And then you can take those budget numbers that you utilized and you can plug it into the app, and then it'll monitor your transactions and categorize them for you. And then it'll give you proactive notifications like, hey, you went to Steak and Bourbon, so you're already at 75% of your spending target for restaurants this month, and it's only the 15th. So I think being able to do that exercise once a quarter and then have something to track against it, cash flow and income, those are the lifebloods of a good financial plan. So you just have to make sure you understand what's really going on, because life moves quickly. Everybody's excited about credit card points. You just spread them out over a bunch of cards, and you're like, oh, God, I don't even know what I owe right now. And that's where I think people get themselves into a lot of trouble.
That's a good tip. Do you get a lot of those Steak and Bourbon notifications that you've been to many times?
Probably more than I should admit, yeah.
Then you just swap to a different restaurant. It's a different notification. That's like it never happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Justin, you've given us a wealth of knowledge. That's why I wanted you on, because I know you've got so much great information to share. If someone does want to reach out to you, what's the best way they can?
Yeah, so you can shoot an email to justin.hack@nm.com, like NancyMary.com. Or shoot me a text, 502-562-2504. I'm always happy to have a good conversation. Like I mentioned, doesn't matter where you're at in life, doesn't matter who you are. If you are coachable, you're willing to learn, and we can have mutual respect for one another in our time, then I will always take that case and give you some tips. So feel free to give me a shout, shoot me an email. We can always get you set up on the calendar.
Awesome. Love that. Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. To all those watching, thanks for listening again, and we'll see you on the next episode.